try and come up with some ideas of what that is. And now the rest of the poem will be kind of a game that he gets to play with. What is grass? Whitman, by the way, loved grass because it is everywhere. Notice how much of a democratizing effect grass is. Everywhere you go, there's grass. All over the world, there's grass, right? Weeds sprout up in the middle of the road or the sidewalk, correct? We try and get rid of it sometimes, and it comes back. Whitman loved that image of grass being, I'm going to use an ACT word, ubiquitous, everywhere present. It's all over the place. And notice how most grass, you don't even plant it. It just seems to kind of sprout out of nowhere. Take a look at the way he says it. He says, how could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord. You might put a note to yourself at 3A. I can't get into it, but we'll note Shakespeare's Othello and the way a handkerchief plays into a whole important moment in that play. That he's playing a game here and a reference. Or I guess it's the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designately dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners that we may see and remark and say whose. Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it's a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white, Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff. I give them the same, I receive them the same. Whoa, whoa. See, if you're paying close attention, you realize just how radical in 1855 those lines were. Did you notice that he said white and black are the same? Did you notice that he said a congressman and a hobo, a vagrant, a nobody, a cuff, exactly the same? He said a Native American and an American, same. This is radical for the time. In 1855, nobody writes poetry like this because nobody believes this. Whitman is way ahead of his time. He will later tell us, men and women, same. He is the great Democrat. Now, I'm not using that in the frame of political language of Republican Democrat. I'm using it in its purest sense. Democracy, equality. It is to say, Whitman sees the grass representing equality. Keep going. And now it seems to me interesting, because if you'll think about it, it makes some sense. Now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. What? But think about it. You eat bread. Bread comes from the grass. The grass is buried in the earth. You eat cows. The cows eat the grass that comes from the earth. But at some point, you don't get to eat anymore because you're dead. But when you're dead, you're buried where? In the grass, under the dirt. From the dirt comes the grass. All of that for Whitman, the great circle of life, if you learned it with Disney and your Lion King, all of that makes total sense to him. Take a look at how he says it. I'm reading, by the way, Miss Bird, on page 513, line 25 and following. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly will I use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be if I had known them, I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people or from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are their mother's laps. The grass is very dark to be from the white heads of old mothers, darker than the colorless beards of old men, dark to come from under the faint red roofs of mouths. Oh, I perceive after so many uttering tongues, and I perceive they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. I wish I could translate the hints from the dead young men and women, and the hints about old men and mothers, and the offspring taken soon out of their laps. What do you think has become of the young and old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life and does not wait at the end to arrest it and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, and nothing collapses. And to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. Now that final line was, of course, quite radical for its day. It's lucky it's lucky to die. Death is something quite different from what we assume. Think about it this way. Even if you believe that once you die, nothing happens to your soul and you are dead all over like the dog Rover, you still get planted in the ground, and out of the ground grows grass, which then animals eat. We turn around and eat the animals. That is to say, you're still serving a purpose, even in your death. Everything goes onward. In other words, nature has a certain kind of dynamic energy which cannot be stopped. Whitman will say, people are the same. And collections of people, let's call it America, also the same. So in other words, Whitman will point out the stuff that we often fear should really be the stuff that we most enjoy. The only reason we fear it is we don't understand it. And to die is luckier than what anyone would suppose. In other words, what Whitman's going to do is he's going to take stuff that we normally think is like everyday, like grass, and he's going to use that as a working metaphor to begin to make us think differently about our life. And in so doing, Whitman becomes one of the radical poets. Now, as we go forward, we're going to ask about Whitman's view of education. Here, we're going to pay particular attention to passage 46-47 of Song of Myself. That you have not in your hymnal, but in that copy that I made for you. So when you come to class tomorrow, we'll see. Mr. Dewar is out of town. I don't know if he'll be presenting. If we don't have Mr. Dewar, we'll continue with Whitman. If we do have Mr. Dewar, we'll continue upon his return. We'll be working with Whitman's view of education. Then, go ahead and jot it real quickly down. Passage 48, also in your packet. Whitman's view of God and religion. The iconoclastic view of God and religion. So we'll be looking next at Whitman in regards to his radical view as teacher. You're asking me questions. I hear you. I answer. I cannot answer. You must find out for yourself. Quoting lines from passage 46-47 of Song of Myself. Mr. McGee, what should I do when I grow up? That's right. No, I'm serious. I need an answer. Right. Thank you.